This is why you see Giorgia Meloni, the Italian prime minister, and Tusk over in Poland, both backing away, saying, whoa, we think we want to praise Donald Trump. They're taking a page out of President Putin's book. Let's talk about the meeting that Starmer had with Trump right prior to that, where Trump embarrassed him, humiliated him, not once, but twice. The first time when he interrupted him and said, you think you can beat the Russians by yourself? And the entire press room laughed because the UK is a joke, a literal joke. And then later on, when Starmer tried to intercede on behalf of Canada, Trump just shut him. I said, that's enough. Shut up. You're done. And shut him up right there on the spot. Starmer also stuttered around saying that the UK is ready to back up the security of Ukraine with boots on the ground and planes in the air. But then he turned around and said, but we have to be backed up by the United States, which means it isn't going to happen because we're not going to back that up. France immediately ran away from that. So did Poland. So did everybody else. Starmer is sitting there alone. Starmer's a nobody, a nothing. And he knows it. This is just political posturing that's taking place here. Put something else that Starmer didn't mention. The British signed this deal, a $100 billion deal or something with the Ukrainians about the minerals, the same ones that Trump wanted to sign a deal for. And you're probably asking yourself, how can the Ukrainians sign two deals? They can't. I will make this prediction. When this is all said and done, the British deal will be canceled in its totality. And whatever is the Ukrainian government will sign a mineral deal with the United States, with Donald Trump. What was the first thing that Putin did when Trump got elected? Didn't pay attention to the idiocy coming from Kellogg or the stupidity coming from Trump himself. He said Donald Trump is a great man, a brave man, a man who withstood fire, who stood the test. He said nothing but positive things about Trump, and that plays well to Trump. That means that Trump is, I'm willing to listen to this guy, to talk to this guy. But when you come out, as Starmer has done, saying that Donald Trump is a stupid man, an idiot who Europe must actively conspire against, Trump doesn't forget this. He has a memory like an elephant, and he will not forget and he will not forgive. So they're all in a panic right now. They're desperate to keep the United States in, but they've committed so much political capital to this Ukraine fiasco. But the hilarious part now is having them all say, you got to go back and apologize. You got to go back and apologize. What I do know is that the British, the French, and everybody else were talking very big when they assembled this emergency summit about the need for an independent European security and military. The
illusion of European unity is crumbling right before our eyes. Leaders who once boasted about defending Ukraine are now scrambling for cover, retreating from their own grand promises. And behind it all, a desperate bid to stay on America's good side, especially if Trump returns to power. This isn't just about war. It's about power, control, and betrayal. Buckle up, because what's coming next will shake the very foundations of Europe's so-called security. And just when we thought the storm had settled, another thunderous event shakes the geopolitical landscape. The analysis of Scott Ritter's perspective has laid bare the raw realities of this war. But now, we shift to an even more shocking development, one that could redefine the course of this entire conflict. Russia has just signed what is being called the deal of the century. But what does this really mean? Is it a game changer, a strategic masterstroke, or a calculated maneuver that will allow Russia to continue its offensive with even greater force? Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is nothing short of earth-shattering. Thunderstruck, Russia's deal of the century unleashes a new reality. Russia has just pulled off one of the most cunning, audacious, and strategically advantageous deals since the collapse of the Soviet Union. Not one, but two major agreements have been signed, sending shockwaves across the world. These deals involve a ceasefire on energy facilities and a ceasefire on the Black Sea. And at first glance, one might think this is a diplomatic breakthrough. But make no mistake, this is not a peace treaty. This is a power play. Ukraine, desperate for any leverage in this brutal conflict, managed to squeeze out only a few crumbs from these negotiations. According to the deal between Ukraine and the United States, not even Ukraine and Russia, Russia is supposedly obliged not to move its warships beyond the eastern part of the Black Sea. If they do, Ukraine reserves the right to strike them. But let's be real, Ukraine already had this right. This is nothing more than a repackaged status quo, a meaningless gesture dressed up as a victory. Another so-called win for Ukraine is the United States' promise to help facilitate the return of prisoners of war. Again, this is not new. Prisoner exchanges have been happening throughout the war, and with Ukraine holding significantly fewer Russian prisoners than Russia holds Ukrainian prisoners, it's clear who benefits from the existing system. This is not a breakthrough. It's a consolation prize. Russia's grand victory. A deal that changes everything. While Ukraine walked away with symbolic gestures, Russia emerged with a strategic goldmine. This deal has handed Moscow everything it wanted without forcing it to stop the war. 1. Sanctions lifted. Russia's economy unshackled. The most explosive aspect of this agreement is the lifting of critical sanctions. The United States is committed to removing restrictions on Russia's financial sector, including Sberbank and other key institutions. Trade financing, allowing Russia to freely conduct international transactions. Export companies producing and shipping Russian food and fertilizers. Russian ships, meaning European nations will no longer be able to detain them. Agricultural machinery sales to Russia, boosting its food production capabilities. Let's be clear. These were some of the most crippling economic weapons the West had deployed against Russia. And now, in one fell swoop, they are gone. Russia's economy, which has been under relentless strain from Western sanctions, is about to experience a massive resurgence. 2. The Black Sea, Russia's new stronghold. This deal also fundamentally changes the balance of power in the Black Sea. While Ukraine technically retains the right to attack Russian warships if they cross certain boundaries, the real winner is Moscow. Why? Ukraine can no longer use commercial vessels for military operations. For months, Kiev had been using seemingly civilian ships to launch surprise drone and missile attacks on Crimea and other Russian-held areas. Now that tactic is off the table. Russia has secured unrestricted access to Black Sea trade. With sanctions lifted, Russian exports of grain, fertilizers, and other goods will flood global markets. This is a huge economic victory for Moscow, giving it both financial stability and diplomatic leverage. 3. Russia's military machine remains unchecked. Perhaps the biggest bombshell in this entire agreement is what it doesn't do. It does not force Russia to stop its military operations. It does not restrict Russian offensives. It does not impose any meaningful limitations on Moscow's war effort. This deal allows Russia to continue its military campaign with zero economic restrictions, rebuild its war economy with full access to global trade, maintain strong relations with the United States through a formalized deal. Put simply, this is a dream scenario for Putin. Russia can wage war without suffering the financial penalties that once threatened to cripple its economy. With fresh resources and fewer restrictions, Russia is now in an even stronger position to intensify its attacks. Ukraine, on the other hand, is now staring down a much more dangerous enemy. With the economic leash removed, Russia is free to escalate its offensive with more firepower, more resources, and more strategic maneuverability. And that is exactly what we are already seeing on the battlefield. The Russian offensive gains momentum. In the Sumy region, Russian forces are advancing aggressively. Villages like Vadimka and Vahi are being stormed by Russian troops. The checkpoint on the border has seen heavy fighting, with Russia pushing deeper into Ukrainian-held territory. Captured Ukrainian Abrams tanks are now appearing in Russian hands, a devastating sign of battlefield losses. Russia is not slowing down. It is accelerating. This deal hasn't brought peace. It has emboldened Russia to strike harder and deeper than ever before. A masterstroke or a trap? While this might seem like a total Russian victory, there is one wild card in play: Ukraine's response. Zelensky and his government despise this deal. They see it as a betrayal, a disaster, and a gift to Moscow. Reports suggest that Ukraine will do everything in its power to sabotage this agreement. How? Blaming Russia for breaking the ceasefire first, using April deadlines as a loophole to exit the deal, provoking new conflicts that force the West to step back in. Ukraine knows that if this agreement holds, it will be in a much worse position by the end of the year. Time is no longer on Kyiv's side. Every month that passes under this deal strengthens Russia and weakens Ukraine's leverage. So, what are we witnessing? A war that is about to enter an even deadlier phase. Russia has secured the ultimate strategic victory. Continued war with zero consequences. Sanctions have crumbled, giving Moscow a financial lifeline to sustain its military for years. The battlefield is shifting, and Russia is pressing its advantage with full force. For Ukraine, this is a moment of crisis. For Russia, it is an opportunity to cement its dominance. And for the world? This deal is a warning that the war is far from over. If anything, it is about to explode into a whole new level of intensity. The thunder has struck. Now, the storm begins.